Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Cybersecurity Recruiter podcast. Today, I'm joined by Michael. How you doing, my friend?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Good. No worries at all. So, for everyone listening, we've got Michael Stratos. He's been the owner of Ideal integrations for over 2 decades. So this is an entrepreneur who clearly knows what he's doing. I'm imagining there's some twists and tales and some stories to tell within those 2 decades. But Michael, I'll start where I always start, which is who are you? I know I've done you a bit of an intro, but who are you and what have you been up to professionally over the years, my friend?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's funny when you did that introduction and saying that Ideal's been around for 2 decades. That's everybody will listen. Oh, that's great. And I'm looking at it saying, wow, wasn't even where I started. And I've been here for over 20 years. I heard I'm old is what I heard in that. Yeah. So I started off, I'm going to go way back that I think it's somewhat important. My degree is in biochemistry, believe it or not. But I had a passion for technology. And after college, I was accepted in going to medical school. And I decided that summer in between my senior year and going into medical school that I would rather do consulting or do technology. So that's what I did. I went into consulting that summer. And my father, when I said, you know what, I'm not going to go to medical school, you can imagine how that conversation went. And this was early on in the technology days. So when I told him I was going to do work with computers, his reply was, "So you're going to play video games," is what he said, because I liked video games. So that's where it started. And I think that's important in that it was a passion of mine. And so that's why I pursued it. And obviously, if there's something that you're passionate about and you put the time and the effort into it, I think that there's a high success rate. So I started doing consulting early on that evolved. I had a few different companies. And then, like you said, a little bit over 20 years ago, started Ideal. Was fortunate enough to find some very intelligent people to join the company. And over the years, we've grown it and we are what we are today. And that's who I am. I'm also a husband, a father of very wonderful children. That's a blessing for me, probably more than anything else, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, cool, Michael. So yeah, there's some nice things to unpack there. You briefly talked about the consulting side of the business, which is a bit I'd like to come on. I know a lot of people listening are in the consulting game. I know it's not easy to get right. There's a lot of skills in and around the technical skills that need to be mastered to do it well. And I know me and you have talked about that off air. So it'd be nice to come on to that. Just a second ago, though, you mentioned you found your first few really good hires. And I know how important those first few hires are when you're getting a business off the ground. If your first two hires, if you've got a headcount of four, a 50% of your culture, they're paramount. In terms of getting started, there'll be people listening now that are maybe in the early stages of business or thinking about getting started. How did you select those first few hires? How did you create that kind of stable platform, and how did all that go down?
There's several people and everyone was a little bit different, but I would say the common layer is they all had a passion for technology. They would be doing it in some way, shape, or form, even if they weren't doing it as their profession, if that makes sense. For me, even when I wasn't working, I was still on a computer and doing things and learning. And that was a big focus of mine early on when I was by myself and doing just consulting is again, because a lot of us that are in technology, we understand technology, we love it, but there's a lot more aspects to business than just being good at technology. You have to sell, you have to do all of these things. And I didn't know anything about that stuff. So very early on, I just focused on doing as much as I could, even if it was, I'll call it somewhat pro bono. What I looked at is it was something that gave me experience. I probably didn't know it at the time, but it also was networking because when somebody needed help, I said, I'll help you. Didn't worry about the money, didn't worry about any of that. And I looked at it as I'm going to learn from this and eventually it will turn into making money. And at the time, like I said, I didn't realize I was networking and building up a group of people that would then rely on me and then also pass my name along. Call it
Mm.
fortuitous, but that's how it worked out. As far as hiring people later on, once I started the business, it was really same thing, networking. Some of the people, I can think of one in particular, that person was working in technology and I went to sell to that company. And well, actually, it wasn't me. It was two other people that went and they came back and said, look, we're trying to sell this guy, but he knows more than we do. And so that was like, oh, okay, this is a challenge. I'm going to go and we'll see. And I sat down and he and I did a technical joust back and forth, and it was fun. It wasn't like competitive.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I was determined, he was determined to show me how good things were. And I was determined to find a hole. And you know how this is in technology. That's how you gain respect for the person. And so he was very good. And eventually I ended up hiring him to come over and whatnot. So it's really about just being out there, experiencing and finding people that you see have a passion and just want to do this for a living.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds to me like you'd have made a good headhunter as well, mate, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, maybe not. I can help.
Yeah, cool. So just to summarize for the listeners then, use the word pro bono, use the word experience, networking. I think you used the word long term. So essentially, it was doing the job, focusing on just providing a mega service, taking a more long term approach. And then the compound effect of that over years and years just all of a sudden kind of really kicked in and making it sound easier than it is, I'm sure. But bang, you've got a solid business and a solid network. And it's done over time. Yeah.
Yeah, I again, maybe we'll call it lucky. I don't know that it's all luck though. I never focused on the money part of things. And I know that sounds crazy, right? Because we all need to make money, we need to provide, we need to make a living. And I would never say to somebody, don't make the best living that you can. But with anything in life, you have to make an investment to get ahead. And I see too often that people are so focused on a title and the income more than or the effort to put together the package that they're presenting to get those things. If you focus, especially early on, and honestly, it's not just early on, it can be at any time on putting yourself in a position to be valuable to a company. The financial aspect of it will come, in my opinion, because I always tell people companies can afford to keep you. You have to make it so they can't afford to lose you.
Yeah, definitely. And I think as well, Michael, money and a title and things like that. I think they're always a bit of an anticlimax when you get there. Whereas tapping into your sense of purpose and having a mission, I know from the teams we have over here, if everyone's on a mission and the money aside, people kind of work better as a team. Will work harder. Will do a lot more for each other when there's like a common goal and a mission in place. I think you get more out of the team, out of people, and I think you're happier in yourself as well, aren't you?
Yeah, let me, I'm going to turn it around on the podcaster right now. If I said to you, what's more valuable, a high level of title or a high level of responsibility, right? Because you have a lot of people that have a high level title that are easily replaced or they don't need it. It's the first to go. But if you have a high level of responsibility within an organization, that is tough to just let go because somebody else has to pick up that responsibility.
I think a lot of I won't mention any names, but I think a lot of big companies play that title game as well. Because you look at some of the large, big corporates, and they've got these very grand titles, and it doesn't match up with what people are doing at all. I know from speaking to a lot of people in the market that it is the case. So I think some companies are trying to play that title game. But yeah, no, I hear what you're saying, Michael. It's
And I'm not putting down having a title. You
no,
earn that, but you have to have the responsibility underneath and the value that goes along with the title that puts you in that position, in my opinion.
yeah, yeah, cool. We spoke a lot about the sales side. I know you're from technical engineering. You've had to make that transition from being more of a engineer into that kind of business, sales, communication aspect. Very difficult to do so. Very difficult to execute well on a consistent basis. How did you do it, mate?
I don't know that I had a choice because it was just me. So if I was going to get any business or any work, you had to do it. So I figured it out. So this is another one of those little things that I would offer up to people is one of the best things that you can do, not just in business, but probably in life is figure out how to become good at something that you don't like to do or that is not in your wheelhouse. Most technical people are not people that are engaging or want to have a conversation about it. They love it and they can talk to their peers about it, but you're talking at a technical level. You have to figure out how to translate that to somebody across the table that may not know as much as you and do it in an engaging fashion. If you could master that, you put yourself in a really good position, right? So that's something that I was fortunate enough to do and fortunate enough to find other people that were very technical that also not necessarily out of the gate, but over time figured out how to talk to people about that technology or what it is that they did within the company, engage them and excite them about what we were doing, which turns into sales. It's technical sales. I would never profess to be good at the other part of sales about touch points and following up and those things. I absolutely need help on that. But if you ask me to sit and talk with somebody, whether it be an engineer or a C-level person, I can translate that technology in either direction.
Definitely. I've used this phrase before and I'll unapologetically use it again, which is get really comfortable being uncomfortable. And just to pick you up on that point as well about if you do get good at communication or get good at consulting or a certain aspect of sales, it does really make you stand out because most people don't want to do it. I learned as a recruiter early on, if you get a reasonable level of technical knowledge, you just stand out because most recruiters will come into the market and try and just wing it. And I can relate it. I can see similarities there. If you're very technical and you upskill on the comm side, communication side, it's you're just going to stand out above the noise.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
As I think back, when I was in high school, I won an award and I had to go up and give a speech in front of, to me, what was, it was hundreds of people, but it was a lot to me.
Mm.
And I had never done that before, which again, that's one of those things, talking in front of people and then talking in front of a larger crowd goes even to a whole other level that people just tend to not like to do. And I didn't know one way or the other. And I got up there and I remember literally giving my speech and looking at my hands trembling, like I was literally shaking. And I didn't realize that I was like nervous, but I'm looking at my hands like, what is going on here? And then I feel my eyes are like watering up. And then as I'm going through this, I said a part of my speech that I didn't intend to be funny, but everybody
Oh,
laughed at what I
brilliant.
said. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And then it calmed me down and like went from there. So maybe that was my first dip into the water of talking in front of people, but it was borderline, let me tell you.
Yeah, no, it sounds like it went all right. Well, it sounds like it went more than all right if you got the room laughing. Do you know a guy called? Do you know? He'll kill me. And this is the second time I've brought this up on the. But do you know a guy called Tim from Red Siege?
It's familiar, but
Yeah, he does a bit on the. He does quite a bit in the community. He has a thing called Offensive Wednesdays, which is all like career
yeah,
progression and community stuff. But he did some public speaking and he openly talks about it. But basically, the whole speech was over in about, I think it was like 2 3 minutes flat. He just read his whole thing way too quick. First time
it,
he spoke again, but it sounds like for the first time, if you got the room laughing, it didn't go too bad.
I'm not going to take credit. I got lucky. I didn't wasn't intending to be funny, and somehow I was. He might have been just laughing at me, period, shaking. So who knows?
Whether you made them laugh, it sounds cooler. You've mentioned there about obviously we talked about public speaking, we're talking about consulting and the value that brings to your customers and the service you can provide. I know certain guys on your team are active in the community, they've got great communication skills. What is that something you're looking for these days when you're hiring people? What's your kind of viewpoints on that?
Well, yeah, obviously it depends on the position because there are some positions that are more technical. However, if you have that skill set, you're going to put yourself in a better position. And even within the company, right, it helps you even communicate with your peers.
Mm,
So we're always going to look for that skill set. I wouldn't say that you have to have it 100% for some of the positions that we have, but it's certainly going to be to your advantage. And we're very big on growth within our organization. If you're looking to elevate yourself to other roles, as you are elevating yourself, the further up in those roles, the more you're going to have to be in front of people and talking. And certainly if you want that ability, you're going to open up more doors for yourself. And obviously that's
mm,
not just within my organization, it's any organization. You have to
mm,
be able to communicate
mm.
and influence people.
Definitely. I think as well, since remote working and stuff like that, I think probably even more. Do you know what I mean? It's probably like it's the communication piece becomes vital. If you're together, maybe you get away with it a bit more. I think it's just becoming ever more important. Any tough times over the years? I'm sure there's been some difficult moments. Any tough times setting up the business or kind of peaks and troughs or anything that the listeners could learn where you've overcome some adversity during your business or your professional career in general?
Yeah, it's not just in the beginning stages, it's throughout. It's just they change, right?
Mm,
So yeah, there's absolutely tough times. What I can share is that the toughest times, especially in the beginning, and I think that's more of the focus is well, how hard was it in the beginning when you first started and the obstacles and all those things. And I actually look at that as back now as some of the fondest times, right? When you go through tough times and you figure out how to get past those tough times, those are the fondest memories. It's a sense of accomplishment, right? Growth, all of those things. That never stops in business. It changes, it scales, all of those things. but it never stops. So right now, I can sit there and say I look back at some of those early times, and the toughest times and the early times were the funnest because it was the growth and whatnot. And now I have a tough time yesterday on something. It's new. Now, 5 years from now, I might look back and say, boy, that was something different that we went through and we got through that tough time. But all of them, and I know it's cliche, but they're all learning experiences. And as you go through business and life and you go through those tough times, you learn from them. And now you have a larger base to go from when you hit the next tough time, that maybe you're a little bit ahead of the game and dealing with it and getting past it and knowing that there's going to be a tomorrow and there's always a solution. And again, being in technology and solution focused, whether regardless of the problem, I know that there's always a solution. I've always looked at problems as being something that I don't dwell on the problem very long. I typically shift to the solution fairly quick. Maybe for the first couple minutes, I'll sit there and feel sorry for myself, and then I'll quickly move on to, okay, what do we need to have to do to fix it? And then I would take it to another level is that if I look back over the years, there's been some pretty interesting problems that we've had that we've turned into opportunity. That it was a problem in the beginning that at some point we looked at it and were able to turn it into an opportunity with clients or whatever it is, learn from it, and we try to make those things not happen again, or at least minimize the damage. It's like security, right? Lower
Mm.
the surface area of risk for those problems to occur in the future.
Yeah, yeah. So, Michael, so problem comes in. You sit and think about it a bit. Do you find bouncing ideas around off each other within the team internally helps, and having each other as a soundboard? Is that kind of the methodology? Or
100%. Early on, obviously, when it was just me doing consulting, I didn't really have much to bounce it off of. But that's
mm,
not true either because you have friends or mentors or people that you work with that you have. And I've been blessed to have those people in my life and now blessed with a group of very smart individuals that are very loyal and dedicated and very quick to help in a time of need, regardless
mm,
if it's the company need, but it extends to our clients. And I think that's one of our, I'll say, differentiators or advantages in the industry is that I think our clients feel that, especially in a time of need, that they don't think twice that we're going to be there right in the thick of things with them, that they have resources and somebody that they can call, that no matter what that issue is, that they're going to be there. So I have that same feeling. If there's tough times, we can circle the wagons. Everybody gives input and is rowing in the same direction to resolve the problem and the issue as soon as possible and in the best fashion.
Michael, what you described there about the team all clubbing together, use words like loyalty and sticking with each other. You're talking about essentially cultivating a really solid, steady, and good culture. This might be quite a hard question to answer, but any tips for getting the culture to that point? Because not all companies are able to do that. Is there anything that you've done over the years, or anything you can put it on, or any learnings in that regard?
That's a good question. Culture has always been a big thing for us. I don't know that I would take the credit of, I think I add to it, or there's some traits that I have that might add to it. So, for instance, if there's ever anybody in a time of need, whether it's somebody that works for us or a client or anything, or even somebody, actually, especially somebody who's not a client, we have an emergency line. If somebody calls, our people are instructed to help them no matter what. They don't need a contract, they don't need anything. Help them, we'll figure it out later. When somebody calls and they're in need, you can't be having a conversation about, you don't have this contract in place or this or whatever. We try to help people in a time of need. I
Mm,
try to do that. I think that cultivates a level of trust and loyalty beyond just the people that work for us, but clients that we might get. Because again, if you're not a client, you call, you're in trouble. We, in the middle of the night or whenever it is, and they can't get anybody else to help, we help them.
mm,
That develops a very good relationship. So I
mm,
think maybe that's the part that I added to it, is that's always been something that I've promoted or pushed because I felt that was a necessary thing to provide, if you call it customer service, but also drive the loyalties, and that builds a good culture, not just with our internal people, but also with clients. And then we have a lot of people in our executive team that are also very big on culture, and they are very big on culture within their teams, and then intra-team intra, I
mm.
forget what it is, culture, so that the teams are working together too, because sometimes people
Mm.
can get siloed.
Yeah, but I don't think you don't give yourself enough credit, Mike. It does trickle down from the top, and I can see the way you are and the way you're talking, and I think it does come down, and I see it across. I get visibility on lots of different companies because of what I do for a day job, and I do see the culture trickling down from the founder and the way they are and the personality and the way they go about things. It sounds good. It leads quite nicely onto my next question, which is business landscapes changed dramatically, especially in cybersecurity over the years. It's a much more noisier, competitive space than what it used to be. I don't know if some of this you might have already answered, but how have you dealt with that? How have you handled the additional competition that, 20 years ago, it must have been a lot different, shall we say? So, yeah, how have you coped with how the landscape within the commercial world and the business is changed?
IT as a whole has always changed very fast, right? Now, is it faster now than it was before? Yes, it's been speeding up since inception, so to speak. So it's new, but it's the same. It's just faster of the same. So it's really the same kind of methodology. I think that I've always strived to try to be up on what is going on in the industry and staying up to date with it. And now, over the years and with scaling, obviously, there's so many different categories of technology. It can't just all be lumped together. And so that's where it goes back to bringing in the people around me and been fortunate to bring some very intelligent people. And so we have essentially SMEs or department heads or people that are leading divisions and then SMEs within that. And they are all empowered to have a voice within the company so that as things are changing, we're not just getting a siloed version or opinion. We're getting a group or a collaborative effort. And then, as you said, some of the people in our company, they are well connected in the industry. We've collaborated with a lot of people. So whether they're in our company or not, we're talking to a lot of people and sharing ideas. We're very much a partner with everybody, regardless of who that is. I'm very up on collaborating and sharing information and knowledge and whatnot. And we're not necessarily afraid that it's going to share our secret sauce or whatever. I think that you do those things and you're good to people, that those things come back. And they do, because when you're willing to help somebody and offer information and it helps them, if ever you're in a situation where you need help, those people are very ready to jump to help you because you've helped them.
Yeah, definitely. I know we've talked about this before. You briefly mentioned it then, but can you tell us more about that sharing of information? I know you literally said to me before, you partner with competitors on different projects sometimes, which some people listening might find normal, some might find that kind of crazy, but tell us more about that.
I think that it was less accepted a long time ago when we first started, but I was always one to take a collaborative approach or play nice in the sandbox. We have competitors, but I never looked at if a competitor would call and ask for help, I would help 100%. And it's
Mm,
happened. And I think that having that approach really puts you in a good position. And because I had that approach very early on, I didn't create a lot of, there's some companies that you're more competitive or you go up against than others. But we never really created a situation where our competitors didn't like us for the most part. And so as time has gone on and we've evolved and we've come up with things like our security division, some of our competitors may not have built that out. And so now they have become partners. So
mm,
they will come to us when they have a client that has a need on the security side, and they will bring us in as their partner to provide that for their client. So it's worked out quite well. And we understand the boundaries with those partners slash competitors, and it's worked out well. So we do have a sharing of information. And for my experience, being more open and sharing that information has led to more positive things than negatives. Sure, every once in a while, somebody may not operate in the best of fashion when with that, but the pro absolutely outweighs the con. And you know
mhm.
how that is. If it happens once, you just make sure it
Yeah.
doesn't happen again. That's okay.
Exactly. I know what you mean. Yeah, exactly. That's really sophisticated business development as well, because like you say, you partner with people, leveraging pre-existing relationships. There's a lot of really good stuff there. And you talked there about different offerings from yourselves, different offerings from your partners. I know you've got on the team, you've got NOC, SOC, security engineers, blue, red team capabilities. What does the future hold? What are the future plans? Where do you see things going business wise over the coming years?
So I would share that with you, but I can't let my competition hear that stuff. It's the security and the cloud side of things is probably the fastest growing part of what we're doing. And that's constantly changing. The people that are some of these people, Corey, Luke, who are heading up blue team, red team, and then obviously we have to do the purple teaming stuff too. They have a roadmap of things to come, of additional offerings that we're going to do. Also, enhancing the offerings we have. They're constantly working with our DevOps team to automate a lot of the things we do, integrating AI, all of the things that you hear out there, we're doing and investigating. One of the things that again has served us well is we've tried to be not a jack of all trades, but a master of the things that we do. So we do infrastructure and security. Now there's a lot of different facets of infrastructure and security, but we really don't go outside of that. And while we have a DevOps team, we don't build custom applications for anybody. All of our develop primarily is around automation and streamlining the things that we do and automating the things that we do to make us more efficient. So we really stick to our guns on being good at what we do. And we're very discerning at bringing out an offering, even though a lot of times we're quick and ahead of the game on some of the offerings and building those things out over the years, especially in the as a service model. But we won't bring something to market unless we believe that it is very mature and something that we can offer value. Even though we have customers asking for certain things, vulnerability management has been one that we've been working on for a while, but we didn't feel comfortable with where we were at to say that it was mature enough to offer it. We're getting there on that as well. So while some other people offer that, we want to make sure that we're at a certain level of comfort with that offering before we roll it out. And that should be coming out, if not parts of it already. So some of that stuff, again, on the enhanced security side, always offering more layers of defense on security. As there's no silver bullet. Antivirus alone isn't going to cut it. So there's a lot of layers of what we're doing there. And those layers continue around OT, IoT, because that's a big thing for security, right? Something I can't put an agent on. How do I manage or monitor it? So it's definitely moving in the right direction and fast. So we're pretty excited about the growth. Our growth also from the standpoint of growing geographically as well.
Cool. Thank you, Michael. There's loads of good stuff here, so I'm just going to do a little bit of a mini summary for the listeners so far. Real long-term approach. You talked about partnering with the competition, which is a really sophisticated form of business development. No matter if someone reaches out, you're not getting tied up in contracts and commercials and small print. It's just help them first, worry about stuff later. That kind of stuff always comes back round. If someone does overstep the mark when you've given them a look into what you're doing or a partnership, it'll be the first and the last time they do. So don't worry about it too much. And the point you just made there, just so I've understood properly, you're careful about what you do because security is such a broad range. Even like offensive security on its own is a broad range. So you're picking kind of niche offerings or niche offerings within security and getting really good at them. So you talked about infrastructure and security. So they're the kind of main aspects of what was just about summarized it ish there so far.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think as you were summarizing it, I think the thing that kind of resonated with me, depending on who's listening, right? We went over them from a corporate perspective, what we do as a company. There isn't one of those concepts that does not apply to an individual and how you conduct yourself as an individual. It translates just fine. Think about it, how you conduct yourself as an individual, same as the corporation, all of those things still apply. So I would encourage people, if they're listening as an individual consultant, whatever it is that you're doing, all of these same concepts apply to you as an individual as well.
Next thing I was going to come on to, I know we talked about before taking a consultative approach, not being a yes man or a yes woman. I think that's important. I know we've talked about it before. Can you tell us a bit more about how to go about that and things that people should be doing as a member of the team or as a business owner as well?
Yeah. And that's a skill that you have to develop. It takes confidence, that type of stuff. But think about it. If somebody is bringing you in to help them, you have to be able to be confident enough to challenge and for lack of a better way, say, upset somebody, if you will, to challenge. And if you're not, then you're really not challenging, because if I come in and somebody says, I need you to help me with security, and you start to go over these things that you believe are going to help them with security, and you're backing that with data. And then that person says, that's fine. Here's what we're going to do. If I just say, okay, being a yes man, I will maybe get that business. But then if it falls apart, or I'm not adamant about pointing out where I think that there are gaps, right? Or challenging that without the fear of losing the business. You can't operate in that fashion, or else at some point it's going to come back around to bite you anyway. I would rather stay on the side and be confident that I'm doing the best job that I can to challenge them, especially in security, to challenge them. Are you doing the best that you can do? And oh, by the way, sometimes you can't do everything and there's going to be gaps, but you have to identify them and have a plan. But you want somebody to come in and challenge you. Otherwise, you're just asking somebody to come in and fall in line and status quo, and you're not looking to find the things. You're looking to make it continue to look good. That phrase, and I'm going to get heck for this from our team members, because I always say, call my baby ugly. And they don't like that phrase, but it makes sense. It's in the adage, right? I need to know what's wrong. You have to be confident enough to tell me what's wrong for me to get ahead. If you don't tell me what's wrong, or don't challenge me, or don't call my baby ugly and just say, oh yeah, it's beautiful, then I'm never going to know what I need to do to try to make it prettier or better. We can all just sit there and sing praises about the good things that we do. I have a tendency to focus on what are the bad things and how can I make it better? It goes back to math, right? When it applies to solutions, math is around theories, you always have to try to prove them to be wrong. If you can't prove them to be wrong, intrinsically, that means that they are the most right. Does that make sense? So I never try to prove a solution to be right. I want to prove it to be wrong. I invite people to prove it wrong and poke the holes, because even if they do find a hole, we fill that hole and we make that solution even better than it was, instead of focusing all the good stuff that we all know that it can do.
It does, mate. Yeah, and I think as well, it ties in with what you said as well about if you are really selective about bringing an offering to market, if you're only going to be bringing stuff to market that you genuinely are experts in, I think you can have the confidence to do that. And it ties in with taking a longer term approach as well, because short term it might drain the relationship, but long term it'll improve it and it'll enhance it. And like I say, if you just go along and say yes to everything, and I say the same in recruitment, these people that think you want them to call you customers madam or sir, they don't. You're a consultant. You're bringing in to solve a problem. And it might be, it may well be more difficult at first. Well, Michael, one thing I was going to say to you is, for people listening, I can imagine for you to be like that now, not really easy, but I can imagine it's quite easy. You can imagine things are pretty good and you've done well. You've been in business for a long time and you've been successful for a long time. For people listening that aren't at that stage, like any tip there? And again, it might be a hard question to answer, but if you maybe take yourself back to when things weren't where they are today, was it harder to broach those conversations? Is there anything you did differently, or any learnings or anything now that you wish you knew then that could help the listeners?
The things that I'm saying to you are the things that I learned, that I look back and say, I didn't know those things back then. And like I said, sometimes I just got lucky on some things, and then I learned from that, and I learned from the effort. I think that I had a good work ethic instilled in me as a kid from my family. That helped. I was always focused on working harder. And it's tough, right? Like how things are today. And you hear the phrase work-life balance. Work is a really big part of your life. And if you're investing in the work, you're going to make your life better. It's really a catch-22. And so I worked really hard, but it was fun for me because I enjoyed it. If you love what you're doing, and then again, it's an adage, you're going to spend more time in it. But the things that I've said have all been things I didn't know. I look back on, and I'm telling you, that's what I learned. Get yourself, as you said, comfortable with the things that you're uncomfortable with. Somebody that does that is absolutely going to be ahead. The other thing, I'll tell you one. I have one now. And I get hung up on things, and I try to mentor and tell even our teams things that I've learned, whether they really want to listen or not. Who knows? You'd have to have a whole podcast about that. And here's Michael with his adages again and his teachings or whatever he wants to do. But one of the things that I've learned is the difference between perception versus perspective, or what perspective is versus perception. Basically, I'll explain it. It's the ability to, most people look at things through their own eyes and how it affects their life, right? You have to be able to shift from that to being able to look at things through not just your eyes, but through the eyes of the person on the other side of the table, or from another person's eyes. Really, it's typically the person in front of you, because if you're selling, it's who are you selling to? If you're teaching, who are you teaching? Who are you having a conversation? That's something that I've learned, is that if you're having that conversation and trying to understand it from the other side of the table, you put yourself in a much better place to have a productive conversation, a productive solution. Perception is viewing it through your eyes. Perspective is viewing it through not just your side, but other people's side. Perception versus perspective. You want to shift to perspective versus perception.
Michael, are you a reading man? Do you read a lot of books or podcasts, man? Or?
Probably not. I guess it's relative. I wouldn't say a lot. I do a lot of reading, but a lot of it's going to be technical, but also a lot of learning and self-help and all those things, but a
Yeah.
decent amount. Yeah.
When you said seeing things from the other person's point of view, you've probably read the old classic How to Win Friends and Influence People, and that's a lot about seeing things from the other person's perspective and stuff like that. Is there any books, any self-help books you'd recommend while I remember?
That's an interesting one. I would say lately I've read a few. You're familiar with Jordan Peterson
Yes.
and his books? Yeah. So his books, he has a few. I say probably the more recent ones, the 12 Rules of Chaos or right.
Yeah.
That's a good one. And the second book as well.
Yeah, good. He's quite a divisive character, but I do like him. I don't know if you've ever heard of he's the number one podcaster in the UK. I always mention he's called Stephen Bartlett. Jordan Peterson was on his show recently, but I'll send you a link.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I was hesitating to do that because there's some people that, as you said, divisive. And
Yeah.
here's what I would say, regardless of that, whether you agree with everything that person says or even somebody else, right? You're going to gain knowledge, right? You're going to gain perspective. And what you get out of that is up to you. And I wouldn't push anybody in one direction or the other, but I would say that you're going to learn something from those books, regardless of your point of view. So you're not going to be worse off because of it. I don't avoid reading things from necessarily somebody that I might not agree with, because again, that's challenging me to learn more by reading something by somebody that I may by default not necessarily 100% agree with.
Yeah. We talked briefly 5 minutes ago about working hard or the grind, and while we're talking about pleasing everyone, I know we've spoke about it before as well. It's almost like a bit of a controversial thing these days, which I think it's a load of rubbish. Anything that's worth having, I think you've got to grind for it. Yes, you've got to have the passion there. If you're forcing yourself to do something, it's realistically, it's probably not sustainable. What are your thoughts on all that? And do you think kind of social media is maybe portraying a bit of I don't know. I think you've got to put a certain level of hours into to get anything off the ground. What's your thoughts and views with all that, Michael?
If you do investments, is that like most of us, if we have start to gain a little bit of money, we invest our money. You invest your money because you want it to grow. You want it to get more. You want to diversify and grow what that is. Working harder is an investment in yourself and your growth, right? Now, working harder isn't just your profession, it's your family, and you have to figure out what that balance is and what you need for your life. Certainly, you can go the opposite. You can work too much and not spend enough time with your family. I'm sure that there's examples of things that I sacrificed that maybe in retrospect, that's anybody that, shoot, maybe I should have done this instead of that. Or man, I missed my daughter's soccer game or something. And I didn't miss a lot of those, but should I have missed that or whatever? You can always second guess. But the hard work was always really to put yourself in a better position to provide and to take care of people. And it goes beyond just yourself. It's your family, it's other people, giving back to the community, society, all of those things. I'm a big believer in that. I look at the hard work as an investment in yourself. You have to figure out what level of investment you want to make that gives you purpose and makes you feel good. But I'm with you in that it is shifted a little bit too far in the other direction.
I think so. And you've always got someone trying to sell some course where you pay me 10 grand and I'll change your life and you don't have to do anything. And I don't know, let's see, maybe show my age a bit, but I do think it is good old fashioned hard work. Michael, any tips I'm actually asking for myself, any tips for when you are putting in long hours, anything you used to do? I'm a remote worker. I take regular regular walks and stuff like that. And I really find it helps. I used to meditate. Hand on heart, I've stopped now. I've not kept it up. But have you got anything that you stick by for when you are grinding hard?
Oh, I don't know that I'm, or at least back in the early days, I don't know that I'm a good example of balance. Although that's not true because I would work 16, 18-hour days. I know that sounds weird. And I'm not saying that I'm the norm. I would balance getting up early, going to work, coming home. Then I had family time, like 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. was like family time. I do dinner, my girls have soccer practice, do that, bring them home. Everybody goes to bed. I go back to work at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock and work till 2 in the morning and then get up at 6. And that's not, I'm not saying that's a norm or even viable, probably not even healthy. So I don't know that I would be a great example for that, but I try to balance doing the work. I try to work out, stay healthy. I do try to get enough sleep, but I figuring out how to balance that time and understanding that it's like a prize fight. The bell rings, you go out and you give 120%. But then when you get a moment, take advantage of those moments. If the only time that I have to get a workout in is in at 2 p.m. in the middle of the day, then I'm going to block that out. I'll get my workout in. It's an appointment I have to do, because I
Mm,
also know with my work, there are times where I'm at 8 o'clock at night, I need to do something. Okay. Or 7 o'clock. And that would have been the time that I worked out. So I shifted to the other. So you can look at it as these kind of like spaces that you fill in to get things in that you can't. Now, obviously, not everybody's job allows them to be that flexible, but with the remote workforce, like you said, it's a little bit more flexible than it is. And in the grand scheme of things, anything with business is if you're producing, nobody's going to be coming to you and asking you what you're doing with your time. That's 100% true. Honestly, most employers don't. I'll tell you, I'll speak from my perspective. I don't care what you do all day. If you're getting your job done and excelling and exceeding what it is, do what you need to do.
mm.
Matter of fact, if there's something that you need to do that's personal and you tell me because you need me to fill in on something, I'm going to jump in and help you, which goes back to that cultural thing, is
Yeah,
that
yeah,
our company is very big on that. If somebody has a family need or whatever, we're all hopping on board to alleviate what that person is doing so they can take care of their family. And then when they come back, we know that when somebody else's family member, somebody needs help, they're going to jump in and help them too. That
yeah.
is to me that work-life balance
Mm,
of figuring that stuff out.
mm. I really like that, Michael. And you remind me of, so I had a woman called Avani on a couple of weeks ago. She runs a company called Shellman, fully remote, 500 staff. And she says, forget work life balance. It's about work life integration. And that's basically what you just described. And I think it's such a nice way to work. And I don't know. I think everyone wants to tell everyone else how they should live. If you're happy doing so, I'll do a 16-hour day. I'll stop to sleep. I'll go straight back up, have a coffee, and I'll go again. And I honestly enjoy it. But you've got so many people that will say, "No, you can't do this. You can't." Everyone's trying to tell everyone how to live. It's just everyone does things in their own way. Like you want to go to the gym in the day, cool. You want to bang out 16 hours, cool. It's just let everyone. I say, as long as it's getting done, just let everyone crack on.
Yeah, I honestly, the whole flexible workplace conceptually, absolutely. The problem is not everybody can function in that realm, right?
Mhm.
Can't manage it. It's hard for them to manage. And that's not a knock on them. We all have, like you said, different personalities and work in different ways. And we can't tell other people how to live their life. We're all different. So
Mm,
if you can find a way, and if the organization supports it, figure out how it works for you. But again, it's all about production. Are you producing? Right? Because if you're given flexibility and you don't produce, guess what happens? The flexibility gets taken away. You get a more strict environment to get you to produce. It's not because anybody wants to do that. It's we need a certain level of production, or a company needs that or wants that. And if you have a hard time figuring that out on their own, that's a way for the company to help you to succeed
mm.
to get that production. Right.
Mm. Yeah, no, definitely. And you mentioned there that certain people do function well like that, certain people don't. All the problems I see in the market is when people are changing. I think you've got to hire for the right sort of person that works well in that environment. I see a lot of problems in the market when companies and leadership are constantly changing their minds, back to office, not back to office, do this, do that. Half a team are doing this. So I think you've got to have a clear intentional and cohesive strategy. And when you're hiring people, Michael, for anyone listening that's maybe having issue, I know you guys function well remote. For people having issues with remote working or any tips there? Or what do you look for when you hire someone to function well in that type of environment that we've just described? Any telltale signs or?
Yeah, there's a lot of variables there, right? Again, this goes back. There's no one size fits all for this. There
Mm,
are certain positions that we hire for that 100% can be remote, right? They're typically positions that are further along in their career. People that are further along in their career have demonstrated a certain level of success, and the thing that they do doesn't require as much interaction. However, is a certain level of interaction that you miss if you're not coming into the office. I learned a ton of stuff because I was around smart people. If I'm not in the office, I'm not around smart I'm not around those smart people as much. Now you can collaborate on Teams and Zooms. We can kid ourselves. It's not the same. It's definitely not the same. I used to walk around the office and you would hear people troubleshooting on the phone with clients or whatever, and I would walk over and interject and start to help and collaborate and talk with them. And it became a teaching moment or a mentoring moment. And in many cases, I'd walk over and listen and I would learn something from them too.
Mm.
When you're sitting at home, I'm going to like a service desk, if you will. To me, that's a big one. If you're working from home, you're not hearing those conversations. You're not able to interject. You're not able to learn. You're, in my opinion, hurting yourself in your learning trajectory because you can go take tests and get certifications, and we do all of that. But learning from a peer or somebody next to you, that's invaluable. And so we try to have a mixture of that where we are in the office as much as possible, especially the people that are earlier on in their careers, which are going to put them in a position to advance further at a much more accelerated rate. So for me in particular, when I'm pushing for people to be back in the office more, and it's not 100%, but be in the office more, it's not, it's to drive up productivity because they're going to learn and be more productive because of the education that they're getting from their peers, not some tyrannical thing of just, I need you to be in the office type thing. It's more of, if you learn more and you become better at what you do, I benefit too, but so do you.
Yeah, definitely. And listen, at the junior end, 100%. Like I said, that learning through osmosis, it's imperative when you're a junior. Is there a set structure for that, or is it kind of have you got it set?
We do. There's a couple of things that we have. We do have a set structure of how we have set up the office so that it actually promotes collaboration. The way that we've set up we'll call them pods for lack of a better term, is so that people can be working on something, but then can potentially turn around and collaborate with somebody that's in pods of 4, where our team is able to collaborate and learn from each other. The other thing that it does is it allows not just within the group that they're in, but they have the ability to then experience across the aisle from them a different group, whatever that may be, the knock or something of the sort. Because now they're getting exposure to other areas in the organization that they potentially could get training for and then decide that's better suited for me. I'd rather be over there. If, again, you're at home, you're not seeing that, and essentially you're just, okay, I'm here, I'm doing my job every day, I'm taking certifications, I'm doing the minimum, but my career isn't going in the direction as fast as I would like it to. So I'm going to look somewhere else. I don't want to cultivate an environment where I'm pushing people to go look for jobs somewhere else. I have to, do things to make them want to stay and show them that there is a path for them to grow within our company. And there absolutely is. We've built a program, we call it the Academy, where we bring in people. We have interns all the time, and we are teaching them so that they can come in. And then if somebody, and it happens, people leave the company, which if that happens and they have a great opportunity, I'll shake their hand and feel good that in some way our teams have helped them grow to have that opportunity, along with obviously their ambition. But then what happens is we don't necessarily always need to hire at that level. We promote up, and then everybody gets promoted up. And then we have the interns that we're teaching. They have now an opportunity to fill a position and come in the organization as well. So it's been pretty good. And then that gives people perspective because now they've learned this job. So when they're here, they understand what everybody down here that they have elevated themselves through those positions has gone through, and they have perspective on what they have gone through and have done it. So I think that makes things a lot better.
And I think as well, some of the things that does is when you've got someone leading the team and they've done the job before, I just think there's a different level of respect from the team. Basically, you just manage so much more effectively, don't you?
You know how that's how us technical people are, especially it's tough on the sales side. And this is why we always have somebody that is technical in sales meetings, is because when you're dealing with technical people, those people are evaluating you more or can offer them something. How are you going to sell me something if you don't know more about this than I do, or at least something about this that I don't know?
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely. And also, as well, just another thing I was going to say that I think managing a team when you've already done the job, massive. And I also think as well, the promoting from within, I know from speaking to people all day, it's the single biggest thing is career roadmaps, career progression, above money, above anything like that, that where you're heading and that progression is everything. And a lot of people have to have that feeling of moving forward. It's hard to beat, I think.
Yeah, and I think that our organization has done a pretty good job of doing that. But I also go back to what I said earlier is that we're really big on building the responsibilities and the value of those people that lead to that next position in the title.
Mm-hmm.
I would encourage everybody, make sure you've developed the skill sets, taken on the responsibility, and created the value that allows you to step into that role versus just that's what I think I should be next. Because once you get in that role, it solidifies you in that role and you become very valuable to the company where again they can't afford to lose you. They're going to do everything to keep you. It
Cool.
puts you in a really good position.
Yeah. Yeah, good. We've gone over an hour. I know I promised you an hour, Michael. So this is the last question I promised. But I just want to ask you, I know you've mentioned like you go to the gym sometimes in the day. You've talked about your work routine a bit. But what is it like running and owning a business? Like what does your day look like?
At this point, because it has changed over the 20 years, like obviously early on, you wear a lot more hats. I still wear a lot of hats and I'm involved in a lot of different areas. Obviously, I'm not as granular as I used to be. I used to do the engineering, doing the consulting and what, doing the engineering, doing the sales, doing all of that stuff. I'm more on the strategic side. It's still involved in the R&D and the development and the direction of the company from a technology perspective, definitely involved on the relationship and sales side of things, and then also the business development and looking at strategic acquisitions, etc. So it's grown. It's very different. I think that's been nice for me in that it keeps it fresh. There's always something new and to focus on. And so while the company has scaled, so my job as far as what I'm doing is shifted to a lot of different things. There are times where I wish I could just hole up in the basement with the servers and computers and just do that. That's still in me. Although most of the people, the technical guys would say, you know what, we just need to give him an iPad and let him sit over there so he doesn't mess anything up. Don't give him any control. They've locked me out of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, good. That's your career journey as well. Like if you're talking now about acquisitions, mergers, strategy. That's you growing and yourself over the years, which again is what we all need. But yeah,
Yeah, it's that
brilliant.
balance of doing what you like to do and doing what you have to do. I
Mm,
don't or enjoy. There are things that have to be done to run a business that I maybe isn't something that if I had to pick that I would be my focus. But every day is a new adventure, and whatever it is that I have to deal with that day, I don't sit there and say, "Oh, geez." I'm just like, "Okay, this is what I have to deal with. I'm going to go and do it."
brilliant, mate. I think that's a really good note to finish on for the listeners, mate. So, Michael, thank you for your time, mate. Really nice to see you, and I enjoyed that, my friend. Thank you.
Anytime, appreciate it.